So it was simply called the greatest saxophone solo of all time, with one of the greatest composers that this country has ever produced, at one of the greatest concerts ever, at a time when their humanity was most marginalized because of their race and their choice of artistic expression. In 1956, the band was just happy to be working. The glory years of residencies at world-famous clubs like the Cotton Club were long gone. It ain't the 1920s anymore. Swing was dead and bop was hip. And even bop was changing. It was starting to fragment into different styles and subcategories. So by the time the great Duke Ellington and his big band rolled their passe, old school, quote, not hip band of cats, and when I say cats, I mean, cats, musicians, the players. By the time the cats came into Rhode Island for the Newport Jazz Festival, Duke knew that his popularity was waning, but he was committed in doing what he always did, what some of you do inside of your own sphere of influence, and what I do with my band, my family, my new nonprofit organization, the Frederick Jazz Society. We yearn to recognize the humanity in one another, and through that recognition, unity can be born. So the Duke Ellington Band takes the stage to acknowledge the humanity in one another. Inspired by that feeling of unity, Duke had just given the band backstage a "let's go get 'em" kind of speech, and the cats started to play. But something unexpected happened at the gig. And I can tell you from personal experience that a lot of strange things can happen at a jazz gig, both musical and non-musical, if you're paying attention. During Duke Ellington's diminuendo and crescendo in blues song, saxophonist Paul Gonsalves started blowing and riffing. Everyone here under the sound of my voice, we all have something in common. We are all connected. We are all tethered to each other, and I would argue to something greater than us, to something we may not be able to articulate. Sometimes things, as a young person might say, pop off, and it's a spontaneous acknowledgement that we are in this thing together. It's not fenced in by ideological framework. It's not boxed in by any government or political movement. It cannot be contained by your zip code or your access to education or information. We are one, as the late, great Frankie Beverly might sing. We are connected. We are to acknowledge the humanity in each other that aids us in appreciating the humanity in ourselves. I see you, and prayerfully, you see me too. Now back to the gig. Gonsalves is still soloing, and something crazy happens early on in the improvisation. By all reports, a blonde, beautiful woman spontaneously gets up and starts dancing. Now, by all reports, she danced like no one was watching her. Some of y'all, can I get a witness? Some of y'all do this? Okay. She was dancing like nobody's watching her, like you might dance around your house and the dog is looking at you like you done lost your ever-loving mind. Now, Ellington knows how to entertain a crowd. He's been doing it for 30 years, so he keeps telling Paul, take another chorus, keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. And the crowd in Newport, usually a stoic, well-behaved group of vacationers, they start getting into it. They don't just stay stoic. They really, really start egging this on. All right? There's a recording of this concert called Ellington in Newport that captures the building pandemonium. Now think about this from a 2025 vantage point. There was a time in our nation's history when a saxophone solo in jazz could come close to causing a riot. That's crazy. That is crazy. Paul he doesn't take just one chorus. I'm not talking about, by the way, a chorus is not a measure. A chorus is the whole form of solo. He doesn't take one chorus. He doesn't take 3 or 5. He doesn't even take 10 choruses. Paul takes 27 choruses of improvisational genius. Each chorus was better than the last, with each one more intense than the last. The crowd went nuts. The promoter, the great George Wein, even tried to get Duke to cut the band off because he thought the crowd was going to riot. That gig revitalized Ellington's career, and even though he had helped to change the world, and certainly this country with his music, Duke often mentioned that he was born at Newport in 1956, after logging 30 years in the game. So why do I start with that story? What can we learn from it? What does it tell us about us? I wanted to zero in on a detail that I think we can use as a nexus to develop the next section of this great event that we're having here today. It's my privilege to talk to you about improvisation as connection and the lessons that jazz can teach us about humanity. so I think I can make this accessible. Was Duke Ellington great? Of course he was. He composed several thousand compositions, and hundreds became what are called jazz standards, repertoire that we cats should and ought to know by memory. In fact, if you are a cat and someone calls a Duke Ellington tune on the gig and you don't know it, you will not keep that gig. Was Paul Gonsalves great? Well, of course he was. He played with Duke Ellington until the day he died. Duke had a great affection for his playing. But it wasn't just that. You see where I'm going? Something resonated with a festival attendee, and apparently she couldn't contain herself. She started dancing. Okay, so I don't know if I have any dancers in the house. I don't know any dancers in the house. Okay, there's a couple people that like to boogie. All right. Maybe if if you stick around, you hear the trio play, I can regale you with some stories about how my boy Mel and I used to go out dancing in high school, but that was 40 years and for me 80 pounds ago, so I can't really replicate that here. But the point I'm making is that Gonsalves is improvisation, which in jazz is the art of spontaneous composition, is directly associated with the composer, in this case, the master Duke Ellington, and the musicians that he made magic with at that gig. Jazz improvisation is a people's music. It cannot be quantified or contained. It is, as Wynton Marsalis said, the negotiation of different people's agendas. So I'd like to spend some time talking about improvisation. I believe jazz, improvisation, and music can be the hope for the world, especially in the times that we're living in now. And here's my disclaimer that I'd like to get right out of the way, because this is not to put down any other art form. This is not to put down any other genre. This is not about one thing being better than the other. It's not about competition. I have spent my entire adult life on the inside of this music, and of all the hardships that come with being an artist, trying to keep a band working, touring, battling economic realities, dwindling opportunities to play, the pandemic and coming out of that, perhaps the most pronounced hardship of all is the constant fight against ignorance. Not knowing what jazz is about is almost as bad as blocking one's access to jazz, as jazz is it's our original art form. It is our gift to the world. It is a rare combination of executing a plan and then deviating from that same plan that makes jazz special. I firmly believe that one's ability to handle change and navigate conflict are the two keys to your overall success. Only jazz contains both and combines it with a swing beat. An old Baptist pastor once told me this story, and I have no idea if it's true, but he told me there was this woman lived in the country. She was very poor, so sometimes she walked to the store with a wagon that she could pull because she didn't own a car. Oftentimes, she could only put a few items in a wagon because she didn't have a lot of money, but pulling a wagon of groceries is better than carrying bags. So there she was, walking down the road with her wagon. And so as she passed each farm or these little shacks, the folks living there would call her, "Hey, girl, how you doing?" "Girl, I'm doing fine. I'm just going to get me some food, trying to get me something for dinner." "Oh, but girl, I got some meat. Let me put some meat in your thing." She said, "Oh, girl, I can't take your food." She said, "I didn't say you were going to take my food. I'm saying I have some leftover food that you can have. Take this meat going back home." All right. Past another house. Somebody say, "Hey, I got some of these leafy green vegetables that Laura was talking about. Let me hook you up with some of that." "Well, I don't want to take your No, I'm not talking about taking my vegetables. I'm talking about just sharing the wealth here, just sharing so that everybody can eat." You see where I'm going with this. As she passed each neighbor, each house gave her a little food until that wagon was overflowing with not only that day's meal, but she had food left over the next day to eat. The reason why jazz music is people's music is because it is best played when it is negotiated with others. I come to the gig with my sense of rhythm or harmony of time. You fill my wagon with some melody. We carry that and we add some improvisation or tempo. I have learned to deal with each other's humanity in a way that is life-affirming, that is respectful, and on a good night, on a good gig, it is filled with love. So I have a band. The Eric Byrd Trio turns 25 next year, which is really exciting, especially when you consider that the band is older than the bass player. It's really great to be in a band with a cat that's the same age as your kid. And the conversations are phenomenal. Next week, a week from today, we're going into the studio to record our 11th album, I think. I sort of lost count because I don't listen to them, but thank you. That's very kind. We're going to record another record next week. And so I don't know how many we have. I think it's 11, but every recording project we've ever programmed, every song that enters our orbit, we are constantly considering how each person in the band serves the song and each other. Imagine the great Duke Ellington interrupting that sax solo about 9 choruses in to play his own piano solo. In fact, if you listen to the recording, as I did while I was preparing for today, you can hear Duke and the others cheering him on, not fighting for the spotlight. What goes through my mind when I am sitting at the piano, or a main idea has been articulated and I get an opportunity to play? Nothing. My mind goes blank. I'm not trying to necessarily advance what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to negotiate my space with what I'm already hearing so that my voice adds to the chorus of voices that's in the band. So I'm not forcing my will upon an environment. I'm lending my voice to that chorus. Imagine a world where we actually lived out what we tell our children, to put others before ourselves, advance the idea of how I don't succeed unless we all are heard, defer to the instigation of another's ideas. When the Eric Byrd Trio is at its best, the music is so good that no one can take credit for it. It's bigger than any one person. We are just happy it came through us. I want to live in a world where I'm actively seeking the advancement of others to uplift the collective humanity. I want to see jazz music as a resource and not just entertainment. So in 2022, I was talking to our drummer, the great Al Young, and I was talking about the state of jazz, and we do what old people do. You start lamenting about like the way things are and how things can be better. And Al said something profound, as he usually does. He looked me in the eye and he said, "Eric, we old." Now, I just want to emphasize, he didn't say we are. He didn't put an apostrophe in that mug. He said, "Eric, Doc, comma, we old." And things happen when you get old. You start, you start listening to or getting 60 minutes on demand just in case you miss something. You get into your car and the first thing you do is what? You don't look in the mirror. You turn the music down because I ain't got to be playing my music that loud. Why my music so loud? The other thing that you do is that you gain perspective. So it is said, an author wrote once, that a man spends the first half of his life kind of establishing himself, in the last half of his life looking at who else he can bring along with him. So my hope for community and my hope for humanity is through my new nonprofit, the Frederick Jazz Society, where I am talking to you from. We are close to 2 school systems that have 30 to 50,000 kids in it that have no jazz programs in their high school programs, in their middle school programs, which means a whole generation of kids are not going to be exposed to music that could potentially change their life. Think about that for a moment. So what now, neighbor? What's the why? So that we have a few gigs and moms and dads can see their kids play? Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's deeper than that. This is a picture from the FJS. We just had a jam session in Frederick, and the guitarist is a professional musician in his 30s. The saxophonist in the white is in 4th grade. The saxophonist in the red is a retired musician in his 70s. Is there a greater example that jazz can provide for a lesson in humanity than this? And human unity? The music brings us together. I believe that the downfall of any organized society is gatekeeping access to the arts. I really, really want to drill down on that, but I cannot. But I will say that again. I think the downfall of any organized society is preventing the access to the arts. Jazz is the most democratic, free music in the world. It's American. It's ours. These days, I'm just as passionate about playing this music as I am with my nonprofit and teaching about it. The music provides a space for me to sit on the shoulders of giants, and it gives me a chance to support myself financially and emotionally. It gives me an opportunity to be creative, to give back, to mentor, and to teach. So why is this music people's music? Because each swinging eighth note contains the lifeblood of the musician who plays or sings them. Each beat of the rhythm contains the rhythm of life. Every element of melody and harmony houses humanity. Duke Ellington certainly knew that because he dedicated his life to it. Certainly Paul Gonsalves knew that, and that's why he played 27 choruses on that day in that human connection. Its very nature is rooted in community and harmony and creates safe spaces to acknowledge the humanity of one another. Spontaneous composition changed his career and maybe Paul Gonsalves' life too. All I know is that I'm dedicated to holding up the banner of improvisation as connection. It unifies us all. Jazz and improvisation sees us, and through it, we see each other. Thank you very much.